Hey guys, I just wanted to take this opportunity and inform you about our amazing virtual summit called the Game Changers Summit coming up in January 21st, 22nd, 23rd. It features some of the biggest thought leaders and game-changing speakers from around the world. It is for established business owners and entrepreneurs that are stuck, that are plateaued, and are ready to take things to the next level. We're going to give you some new ideas, some new tools, some new tactics, some new strategies. We're going to be going through all of the amazing stuff to do with leadership, to do with marketing, branding. We're going to give you so much great value. It's insane. And guess what? It's free. Yes, that's right. It is free. If you want to take the opportunity and come and join us for the 3-day event, I shit you not, it's going to be one of the biggest, baddest, biggest events in the whole world. So make sure that you click on thegamechangersummit.com and make sure you click on that because it's a free event. You cannot miss it for no love, no money. So I will see you there January 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and we'll see you there. Take care. Bye.
This is the Game Changers Experience. Deep dive conversations with leading business disruptors, Olympic athletes, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and influencers from around the world. This show will teach you insights about the winning principles in mindset, productivity, marketing, branding, entrepreneurship, business strategy, and more. Hosted by productivity authority, business strategist, former elite athlete, author, and public speaker, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Game Changers audio experience with myself, Adam Strong. Now, today's guest is a little bit different from what we normally have on the show. We normally do a lot of thought leaders, a lot of entrepreneurial type of stuff. But today's guest comes from a very different background, and I'll tell you a little bit about him very, very shortly. Interestingly enough, we've been following each other's past probably for the best part of around 18 months to a couple of years or whatever it is. And it's been interesting just to see the journey that my good friend Steven Gillen has gone through over the last I suppose his lifetime in a way. So let me tell you a little bit about Steven because he's going to probably tell you more than I will, but Steven he grew up in Belfast, but moved back over to London when he was younger, and he got into the life of crime. And believe it or not, he's gone through massive transformation, right? He has gone into what we call redemption, right? You know, really kind of looking at his life and really changed his life around, and now is a successful entrepreneur. He's a best-selling author. He's got another new book coming out. He's also, believe it or not, he's also been given he was nominated for the International Peace Prize 2021, which is huge, absolutely massive. He's got his book's called The Monkey Puzzle, and he's got another book coming out as well in 2022, sorry. And he's even got his own TV show called The Crime Files, which is also on all the major TV platforms. And we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end. Now, what we're going to be talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, is we're going to be talking a little bit about adversity, but we're also going to be talking a little bit about mindset and challenges. And also, we're also going to be talking a little bit about trust, because this show is built on some of my personal values, which is all around integrity, trust, living by personal values and stuff like that. So we're going to be going down that road. So first of all, I just want to welcome you to the show. Steven, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Listen, you've got a very interesting background. When I read your bio, I was like, shit, Jesus Christ. Oh my gosh. Like, I mean, your past, and it's interesting because you were in foster care as well. I mean, I can share that same thing because I was also in foster care as well. Maybe we all have our different experiences and what it is, but you got into crime at an early age, didn't you? And then you were sentenced 17 years in Her Majesty's, I suppose, can't say royal quarters, but I suppose it was a bit of a life shock, I suppose, in a way. But tell us a little bit about your experience with prison with regards to that, because I know that leading a life of crime to where you are right now are two very different worlds, two very different connotations. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you get into the world of crime? Was it because of people around you were hanging out with the wrong crowds? What was the backstory on that?
Yeah, so I had a lot of trauma growing up with the first thing, there's no excuses. Me, it has to be said now in my business life or anything that I do, I think I blame me first. All
Yep.
right.
Yep.
I have the accountability of me first, and you should uh, be there first to manage these things. So it's never about excuses or pointing fingers for me. That's the first thing. But examples of what happened to me then was I was born here. I was taken over to Belfast. As a young child, 6 months old. So this was right in the height of the troubles. The war over there was the first thing. So there was a lot of hardships there. But I was kind of left with family there, so I didn't have my maternal mother, father, normal kind of upbringing, as it were. Then I come back to this country when I was 9, because my surrogate mother, who was a relative really to me, she died of cancer, sadly. So that was another trauma. I come to East London, and I went through a succession of children's homes, and which was quite violent and different stuff like that. Really, they was like mini prisons. They was very tough, Adam, and as a child, I didn't have the right instruction, or role models then. I mean, this is evident. And, I had to really forge my own way and survive, and I really went forward. And yes, it was the bad crowds and all this kind of things, but you have to be accountable. I was an angry child, and I went into, petty crime and really quickly into serious organized crime, which come to an ending really quickly. Thankfully now, when you look back in hindsight, in my early 20s, it was a big sentence, and it was everything that it should have been then. It was a different life then, and that's what happened.
Interesting. Really interesting. Now, I know that when you were in prison, I mean, you were seen as one of the most notorious criminals of the day and age in prison and stuff like that. And I know that I read some of the backstory about the fact that you were in solitary confinement for quite some time. I'd like to talk a little bit about that, because I mean, solitary confinement, I mean, that is you're basically in a box, really, aren't you? And and I don't know what was you thinking when you were in solitary confinement? I mean, we talk about, especially in this day and age, right? We talk about people who have to quarantine and things like that. That in itself is a prison, right? You are being forced to be in a place which you might not like or whatever it is. Prison's exactly the same. When it comes to solitary confinement, what were the things that you were thinking of when you were in solitary confinement? Like, how was you like going through feelings of, oh, I shouldn't have done that, redemption, I feel sorry, think of the victims? What was going through your mind when you were in solitary confinement?
I think it's interesting now, Adam, the state the world is in with COVID, because many people, everyone, basically would have had some kind of test, to their freedom, of having their freedoms taken away, and being locked down, as it were, and having to deal with this stuff where people wouldn't have had any kind of insight into what that would actually be like at all. That's the first thing. And look, we think of many things. I mean, it has to be said that I was a serious criminal, a target criminal in them days. As I said, I was the trajectory of my life, how it was, propelled me there with what I had at my fingertips, which was basically nothing. I had to survive. And so I ran with that. And people deal with imprisonment in different ways. I wouldn't suggest they deal with it in the way that I did, but it's just the way that I done it, to survive. And it was a living hell in there. It was very, very violent. I was a category A prisoner. I was released a category A prisoner, and in units, which is not your normal general prison population kind of thing. It's high security. So it's all about security and containment, which makes things a lot tougher. So, this is where a lot of the solitary comes in. And you know, I mean, I must have done about 5 years solitary, all in all, if you was put it together, which is 23 hours a day in a cell. And you know, there's a lot of tests and different stuff. I've looked at this kind of stuff. You know, human beings, they do. It deteriorate after having to go through things like this, you know, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, even. And it was definitely a terrible time. I studied, you know, I done a little training. You kind of do anything you can to kind of survive and keep yourself strong. But it's funny where the mind takes you, you know. That's why I started writing. That's why I started writing.
I mean, that I was going to say, because like, you know, especially when you are confined in such small quarters, you know, the mind can go in different directions, right? You know, it can take you down these different paths, and, you know, and also from a mental health perspective as well, right? I mean, some people don't deal with that type of thing particularly well. I guess you kind of began to get used to it, I guess, but what did you, I mean, you know, how did your mind cope with that whole kind of being inside for 23 hours a day and having kind of your, I suppose, independence taken away from you? Because that's exactly what it is. You're having your independence taken away from you. You're being told when to sleep. You're being told when to eat and things like that. I mean, how did you sort of deal with that? And what was?
I suppose this is a really good question, really, because it goes to the heart of what, you know, can really forge us for the better or for the worse, in the sense. And I suppose the best analogy is, you know, if you look at some of these monks, for instance, they're not in prison, but they really go away to a cave, or they do whatever they do for years. But, you know, the fundamental thing there is that they deal with themselves.
True.
Now, you know, having everything stripped away from you, Adam, literally, and just being left with yourself is quite a thing, I have to tell you. I mean, there are unbelievable jewels there. And this is, you know, what it's about. It's that real intrinsic, internal, having to manage and learn about you, really, which, you know, in the face of it, because our lives are so busy out here, not many people go anywhere deep as what they kind of thought they would. But there is a lot of value in here. It's can be detrimental, and of course it's not for everyone, and it can do great harm to some people. But for some of us, especially, you know, entrepreneurs, it really is how we are forged to be entrepreneurs and how we are as people that really drive us forward towards success, right?
Was there anyone in prison that you can remember that you thought, you know what, this particular person, and it kind of goes back to kind of, you know, scenes from, say, the Shawshank Redemption, or, you know, and that kind of stuff, where you kind of have maybe the wrong person who's in prison, or someone that has been there for so long that is, no matter how many times he's asked for parole, has not got it, or whatever it is. Was there anyone in prison that you thought, you know what, I like this gentleman or whoever? Was there anyone that you respected, whether it be a guard, whether it be a prisoner, or whatever it is, that you thought, you know what, maybe they could help me kind of, you know, bounce back and make me become a better person when I do get out of here? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you know, there are shining stars everywhere, and it's character based. It really is, you know, always. And, you know, there are them beacons of light and beacons of wisdom, beacons of talent and guidance and strength. And there was certainly, you know, that in there as well. It's not a, you know, in my experience, it's not a fertile ground for things that are good because of the nature of it. But you know, through adversity, you know, we find ourselves in the right ways. And, you know, this is the gift. There are gifts there if we are brave enough to search them in the right way. And these can really help us on our journey. I'm just really, really grateful I was one of them guys to be able to do that.
I know that when you do a lot of these types of interviews, I know that they like to really kind of go into the, you know, kind of, you must have gone through things like violence, and I know prison it's not a fairy tale by any stretch of the imagination, of course, but, you know, I try to look, I suppose for me, is I try to always look for the good in things. Do you know what I mean? I don't know about you, but I guess without that, how can one remain positive? How can one, sort of keep the mind sharp enough for it to give up all hope? Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I mean, I have such a depth anyway, really as a person. I mean, my mother would say, if you put a pebble in my mouth, you won't hear it hit the bottom. I mean, that's certainly true, right? And, I'm very, very, but when you look at the world and its history, even it's, I love human beings. I'm a philanthropist. I do a lot of humanitarian stuff, but I realize in human beings there are dark corners, in us that have to be mastered. And, if you look at just a history of wars and different stuff around the world, it is there, Adam, and this, this is something we have to circumvent, as human beings, and manage. So it is always about bringing the light, for me now.
Very good. Love it. Now, I know that kind of adversity as well, as we're on the kind of topic of adversity, how did you find adapting to the new world after being free from prison? Because I think you were in prison for almost 12 years, and it obviously must have been a bit of a shock to the system, because it is a different world when you've not been outside for 12 years and, things move on, people move on, and technology moves on. How did you adapt to the new world? How did you find it? How did you deal with it internally as well from a feelings perspective? I'd love to know more about that.
It's very difficult. If you can imagine, when you get a long-term sentence like that, it can actually take you 2, 3, 4 years to really heal. That's the truth. But it's the same on the other end, Adam, coming out, really, because, you're quite institutionalized. If you think about how susceptible human beings are really to programming or survival, right? True. So it's very difficult, and of course the world moves on, and everything that moves on. We're talking over a decade here. It's a long time, so it's quite hard to make that transition, which is why a lot of people fail, unfortunately, really.
How did you deal with it? Because I mean, I know that there are, for example, people that come out the armed forces, which again is a very institutionalized, sort of institution, structured, if you like. Exactly, structure and stuff like that. The robot type of program, routines, habits, that kind of stuff. It's very similar, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But what was the first thing that you did? Did you go out and say, right, I'm going to go down to the local cafe and have a good English breakfast? What was the first thing you did?
Well, the first thing is, it's never what you think it's going to be. Right. You can sit there, and of course, these are wonderful feelings that you would think, one day and all this stuff. I mean, there was actually times when I was going through that for a long time. I never thought I would get out. This was how really bad it was. You couldn't see a future. Right. But when you start to see a glimpse of the future, of course, you're making plans of how it's going to be and who's going to be there and all that. It's not like that. It is about finding your feet. I was lucky. I had, some people around me, my wife and different things then, where I was, I had support networks, thankfully. And but it was still very, 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 very tough. And it took me a while to to find myself, to start finding myself again after that.
Nice. Very cool. And I know that being where you are right now, which is kind of very entrepreneurial now, you're very entrepreneurial, you're an author, you do a lot of peacekeeping stuff, and, very different life from when you were younger. What was the, I suppose, what did prison teach you in terms of taking that transition into kind of what you do right now? What was the big kind of turning points, or the, I suppose, what was the kind of the catalyst as such to say, do you know what, when I'm out of here, I'm going to start a business? But was it as easy and was it as simple as we're saying it is? I mean, what's your thoughts on that? When did you first think of, do you know what, I really want to start a business. I want to be independent and sort of, kind of control my future. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, the first thing is the journey is internal, right?
Mm.
But I did, I did start, I know you in there. And then after, when I come out, I went to university, and I got a business degree and done that. That was more because, I'd always thought, wow, I wish my life had been so different, and what if, and all this. And, I just wanted to do it to see, could I do it? I passed with honors. I was one of the, I really, I had that stuff in me, and, I loved it. I was always a great writer, great strategist. I just had a way of knowing what to do, how to do, who to do it with, when to do it. I had that kind of instinct, right? Like in business now, and, the timing of things. And it was wonderful for me to be, to be normal, Adam, after all them years, and find the best of me. I mean, obviously, this is one of my main things even today, is developing as a human being and keep elevating and stepping into my full light. This is why, we achieve so much, because I'm so focused. I'm so obsessive with that. And I always do the right thing. I mean, luckily, now, I've populated my life with wonderful people. I always say they're a lot more wonderful than I would have been, really. But it's the truth. I mean, they all say, oh, Steven, but that's how I feel about it. I'm very grounded. But going back to, to your other question, where you were saying, what did it teach me? I mean, it taught me many things. It taught me that, it's about choices. It really is about choices, and what you put out is what you get back, and what you choose is the direction that your life will go in. It is about the people in your life who you choose to have in your life. And it also taught me about the darker side of humanity, which I really saw through. I saw through that life, and I saw how wrong that was, and how destructive that was. And I was really on a mission to take the experience and the knowledge of that, and try and improve as many lives and, my part of the world as I could, Adam, really.
Love it. Very cool. Why start a business? I mean, I've been an entrepreneur for 30 plus years now. And it's not easy, right? It's just one of those, I suppose, uphill struggles, especially when you first get started. You have these wonderful ideas, right? And for most people that struggle for the best part of 12 months or whatever it is, sometimes half the people give up, half the people continue to struggle on, or whatever it is. But why did you decide to start a business and not fall into kind of what I call the traditional routes of, go to university, get a job, or whatever it is? What was your thought process there?
Well, I have to admit, I thought I was quite unemployable, really. Not because I didn't do the work. I mean, I always done extra work.
Exactly.
It's just the way I was. I was a free spirit. That, that wasn't working for me. And, I had to find something. And my family, my brothers and that, they started off with lorries and building roads and stuff like that, so they was quite successful in construction.
Nice.
And that's how I started. I started there, but family being family, I started at the bottom, and I was a supervisor. I was running my own team, my own contract. I had my own business and all that stuff within 18 months. That was the start of it, really. And that was good, because that was extra tough because of the family. There was no easy rides, as it were.
Question here, and something which kind of cropped into my head as you were talking, was how did you deal with did you ever suffer from imposter syndrome at any point in time, especially kind of looking back at your past sort of life, and maybe when you've had, say, conversations with, I don't know, investors or clients, if you're in networking or whatever it is, did that ever crop into your mind about imposter syndrome? And if it did, how did you deal with it?
No, I think it's fair to say absolutely it did. I mean, look, the truth is, as human beings on our journey, we start as a blank sheet. So falling down and getting up is a big part of it, and going to the next level. but yeah, even for me, it was more of a, a transition, because my metamorphosis was, a 360,
Yeah,
literally, and absolutely, I am what it says on the tin these days. But, there is a middle bit, of course, which had to be traversed there.
yes.
And, yeah, they say fake it till you make it is a great one. I mean, I believe that in a sense, because everyone has to do that at some point. But it's about putting the work in, and again, it's internal. It depends how bad you want it as well, Adam, and how bad you have to have it.
Absolutely.
You know that.
Passion will only take you so far, though. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah. No, you need skills. You need to learn. You need to be open to learn. You need opportunity. You need a whole host of things.
Absolutely, 100%. Very cool. How did you? I mean, interestingly enough, I suppose this is probably going back to when you first started up in the business world and sort of getting into entrepreneurism and stuff. How did you deal with the sort of false perceptions of society and what people may or may not think about you? And I mean, how did you deal with that? Was it kind of, did it feel kind of a bit awkward? I mean, how did you deal with that?
I think the middle bit of game, of course, is where the magic happens, and it's really uncomfortable there, right?
Yeah.
And yeah. I mean, I think for that question, what I done, and I'm very happy to say, is, I seen it as a redemption, and I had a kind of a debt to pay. It was what it was. I had to just get on with it. I was more interested about learning about me, improving me, and doing what I needed to do, to step into my light again. Putting on to other people is never the answer.
No, absolutely agree. Interestingly enough, because one of the things that I really like to, and one of the things that I believe, Stephen, is the currency of trust, right? And I think it's so important, whether it be, dealing with people in the TV and media space, whether it be dealing with venture capitalists, investors, whatever it might be. How did you deal with conversations with those people that had trust issues? Because they might sort of say to you, well, tell me about your background. I mean, you're not the type of person that is going to lie about it. But when they have these, I suppose, not limiting beliefs, but I suppose these kind of ums and ahs a little bit, because they're not sure, because they have these trust issues, and they put these things or they start creating these blockades or whatever it is. How do you get around with people that say, do you know what, I'm not sure? Because I think trust is very important in business. How do you deal with that from your perspective?
That's another great question, because look, I mean, I can remember I went down to I was invited down to a event, speaking event. This is years back. It was called Your Vision of the Future. So I go down there, I walk into this room, and there's VC this, chairman of that, gold commander, of the police this, commissioner of that, and all that. I thought, wow. I said, all these guys are reinventing the wheel, and and they all kind of laugh, but they said, Steve, so are you. And I thought, wow, I really didn't feel that. So there was moments, and I've been out before. I've been out before, going back, and there's been like lords there, and there's been aristocrats there. And of course, we're getting on famously, and then they would, hear something or read something, and then there'd be that moment, Adam, where they think, oh my God. And I used to get really embarrassed at that point. Really, I used to think, oh God, and I mean, I don't get that anymore, which is why we're saying about there are levels of learning and maturity in our journey, but I used to get really embarrassed. But then you would find they'd kind of have that moment, and they'd ingest it. But when they had a little look, they'd really come back and would really get on famously.
Interesting.
Because they'd be really, really interested, really. It's, it has to be said. Of course, there are those who, are entitled to their own opinion. But now, for instance, with the stuff that we're doing, they really are throwing money at us, really now, and that's nothing to do with the past. That's to do with consistent provenance, and work, and innovation that we do, and we've had to work very, very hard, like anyone else, in this space to, make our brand, make our work, consistency of work, get the right shape, to our branding and what we're doing, and offer real value where we're so attractive in the marketplace that we have them contacts that really value what we do now, and them relationships.
It's interesting, and the reason I asked that question is purely because obviously, me being an international speaker and speaking with some of the biggest people on the stage, and one person that really came to my mind was Jordan Belfort, because obviously you've got the Wolf of Wall Street and stuff like that. And I know that Jordan's been on, some of the biggest stages in the world. But then when you ask some of the people about the reasons why they didn't, I don't know, invest with him or whatever it is, it all goes back down to trust. You know what I mean? But do you see what I mean? And that was the real reason why I asked that question, because, like you said,
I've got a bit to add on that. Let me add a bit on that. I think that's valuable.
Yeah.
Look, trust. Yeah, this trust thing. I mean, I have to be honest, with me, with business, of course, we're working on trust, because if I didn't like the people that we was working with, we're at the stage now where thankfully we can choose the people we want in our life. It wasn't always like that. Of course, we'd have to work sometimes with people that would do the work, but we wanted to do something else. I mean, this is the journey. But I'm very experienced now as an entrepreneur, to quite successful in a lot of areas. And, I don't go on trust. I go on a figure of eight, value exchange for me and my partners or who I'm with. And we really go into the minutiae and the business engineering of what that actually looks like in the cold light of day. I mean, these are really experienced guys, like me. So when we're making agreements, it needs to be a win-win. There needs to be a real clarity, and there needs to be a lot of protection in what that roadmap is towards whatever initiative that we're going to JV, or we're going to SPV, or whatever we're going to do with it, right?
Absolutely. Interesting. It was just a real fascinating sort of connotation that came into my head.
Absolutely.
I have to ask you that.
Yeah, it's a good question. But trust, no, there's a lot more than trust going on here.
Definitely.
In the cold life business.
Well, I know that trust is it's just one of those ingredients that I think.
100%.
It's a core ingredient, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, with some of our listeners that are entrepreneurs and business owners, I mean, you've gone through huge challenges and adversities. We've talked about many of them. For those of the listeners that are going through the tough time, especially with the adaptation of trying to adapt to what I call the new world, what I call the hybrid or digitalization of the new world, or whatever it is. And, they're finding it, still trying to find their feet with everything in terms of times of change. What advice do you have for those listeners that are going through those tough times and really trying to find those breakthroughs or whatever it is? Do you have any sort of advice for those people?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we build national and global brands. This is what our core business is, and that's everything from the money modeling to the brand, the design, the digital IP, the PR, and the marketing going out to the deep water. It's how these things are forged together. Obviously, it's just the success of a failure of a business. It's very bespoke. We've helped over 200 plus businesses now. I think we have about 24 brands now. 50% of them are startup, 30% are 1 to 1,000 employees. Your 20% are your 200 million plus guys going up to IPO. Some of the CEOs I work with now. So it's a really rounded, the whole 9 yards. And branding is absolutely key. And I see so many people get it wrong. And they don't know what branding is. It's the first thing. Even people who should know better, it's really crazy. And then they don't know how to translate, or monetize or translate their offerings, correctly. And then what you see is they think that they have a brand and that's it, but a brand needs to be developed,
Absolutely.
Constantly.
Yep.
So this is a big one. I mean, and we see so many mistakes with that. It's shocking. This is one of the things we do, and it really, really elevates a business to different levels and stability when we get this beating heart right.
Yeah, and I agree. I think personal branding is so important. And again, it goes back to some of our conversations around, building trust and, people buy people at the end of the day, don't they? That's what they do is they buy people. And I think you hit the nail on the head when it's like, people need to focus on their personal brands and then everything else kind of comes into play. And I mean, there's a bit more to it, of course, but I do agree with you. Personal brand, I think, is ever more important than it ever has been in the last sort of couple of years in particular. So that's a good one. I like that. Tell us a little bit more about, I know that you are now I know that you've got another new book coming out next year, 22. You've got tell us about the monkey puzzle, because that's an intriguing title. Where did that come from, the monkey puzzle? I mean, I'm like, it sounds like, there's a movie which kind of, Five Monkeys with I think it was with Brad Pitt or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminded me of like Monkey Puzzle, Five Monkeys. I'm like, maybe it's some sort of psychological thriller or whatever it is. But tell us more about that. How did you come up with a title like that?
It's optioned to be a film next year. That we have the script and everything.
Love it.
And it's a big budget movie. It's going to be. There's we're advanced stages with that, but the Monkey Puzzle Tree, where it come from, and it's a wonderful book. It has to be said. I was very privileged to really get the authenticity of the message there that it was, to help as many people as possible. No frills, everything in there, and be able to produce that in a way that could really entertain people. It's been a really big success. Obviously, the name itself, the Monkey Puzzle Tree, comes from the monkey puzzle tree I used to have in my back garden in Ireland as a child. So that's what it is, the monkey puzzle tree. And there's wonderful writing devices in there. It's a very, very emotive book. But I can remember, I can't give too much away apart from to say I can remember wonderful stories. My uncle, when I was growing up, he used to say about the tree that they're magic and it can hear people's thoughts. They knew all the secrets of the land. So I used to be, oh my God, of course I believed it as a young child, and I used to go out there halfway terrified of this tree, right? But it was still, it was always there, and it was that's part of the reason of the book, about the journey.
Very cool. Now, you've also got a new TV show, which is called The Crime Files. Which, when you thought of The Crime Files, I thought, is it Ruth Rendell? Is it The X-Files? I mean, well, what is that? But tell us a little bit more. How did you get into the whole kind of TV and film industry? What was that all about?
Well, I started public speaking with my story, and then I wrote some documentaries on, the world's billionaires as I started. This is where I started, really. They're out there. And, and then I'd done some other work. I really, I was a good writer, so I had an eye for that. And you meet some people and you go forward and all that. And, my story, it was, really pulled into that, to that arena. And I had a media company and marketing company. So I pivoted off that and I learned more. I met more people. Nice. But I made a YouTube channel, which is still there, which is the first thing. And, it was part of getting our messaging out, because I was getting, interviewed. I mean, I had a million hits on in the first day, on one of my videos on YouTube. I've had immense amount of views in there, if people go in there and see. So, but I was doing loads of interviews, and people, we wanted to control our messaging a little bit. All right, for our business and different stuff. So I'd done this YouTube channel, but I ended up interviewing, there's some billionaires on there, David Lloyd, all these kind of people I interviewed. But I, started interviewing, as well, all the top mafia and mobsters in America and Russian mafia in there, all the big names, Michael Francis, John A. Light, all of them out there. And because of my history and the way I was, and I am an investigative journalist now, there's a real uniqueness and flavor to that. Of course, it rocketed. I mean, it's 12,003 subscribers now. But then I went on, because the film and the other people in the industry, I was lucky enough to have a wonderful offer and a wonderful collaboration with Film Vault, who, they are a global aggregate of TV, film content, they have wonderful partners, like Netflix, Samsung TV, and, a lot of other channels. They build bespoke TV channels as well. So we forged a very, very innovative collaboration where, we have another company there, Media Eye Digital. So we package content, as well as we've built, my own personal channel. It's called the Steven Gillen Crime Files. And, we're going to be getting all the best, top best exclusive genre really in there, from film to series to documentaries. So, of course, I'm up there. If people go in there, we're on Roku TV now, as well as a lot of other digital platforms. We're streaming worldwide. We're on Amazon Fire now, where we're going to be on Samsung TV, Philips TV, Sony TV. We're going to go through all these major platforms. It's very innovative and have an unbelievable audience around the world. But it's another thing I would say in the back of that is we've just refurbished our own film studio. So this is, to create content for all our broadcasting partners. So there's going to be a lot of really exclusive stuff in there. Now, I have to say, we in no way glorify crime or anything like this. we just don't. I mean, some of our sponsors would be the police even. This is the truth. I am an investigative journalist. I am a witness. And we are really, we're interested in the investigative journalism, true crime, redemption arc, and all this kind of stuff. So it's about changing crime and the causes of crime, and really going with some of these big names to cover their stories. They're fascinating. It's a big genre, but we're really, we're interested in, the gifts of how to stop this behavior, and really having that elevation, Adam, that helps the kids or helps other people who may think that this is cool, or it's a really good medium for that. So this is a wonderful thing.
It's a great tool. I think it's a great tool for sort of the younger generation, and if you're creating them tools and education, then hopefully we'll see a more safer society around the world, which is fantastic. You're doing a great job there.
I mean, Adam, look, as we know, we've all we know how hard it is, to change behaviors.
It is.
We know how tough it is. But, we use whatever tools at our disposal to make things better, in a good way. I mean, I have 4 really international documentaries on the slate. And some of these are really, really big. They'll be going to, Netflix, different places like that. But they're really recounting, a lot of journeys of really people who, a lot of these up and coming children or people who are struggling with this kind of thing would really listen to. And then, you keep putting that messaging out in a very skilled way, then, this is a good way to try and affect meaningful change as well. So, I'm very proud of that. And, I know we're all on a mission for that. This is one of the central factors for us, with all this content driven innovation that we're doing now.
Love it. Very cool. Listen, this has been a great conversation for you guys that are listening in, and I hope that you've got something from today's show, and you've been listening very attentively to, again, like I said to you at the very beginning, a very, very different story from a slightly different angle. And that's what I love about this show, is just bringing on some awesome people like Steven to give us a different angle from different backgrounds. So, Steven, just want to say thanks very much for sharing a little bit of light, a little bit about your experience and stuff. I just want to say thanks very much for being on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me on, and a big hi to all the listeners out there.
Thank you. And guys, listen, if you want to connect with Steven, please do so. We have his social media links on the links below. So feel free to connect with him, and make sure that when you do mention this podcast so that he can click 2 and 2 together. You can check out the Crime Files with Steven Gillen on all the good TV outlets as well, TV channel outlets. Steven has already mentioned a few of those as well. And you've already actually got, they already actually know that Samsung are bringing out a Samsung channel, by the way. Okay, so that's not going anywhere, but that's between me and you. Okay, guys. So listen, hope you've enjoyed today's show. Hopefully we'll see you again back on the next Game Changers audio experience. Take care and see you soon. Cheers now. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening into today's show. I hope that you have enjoyed today's show. Just a reminder, we love creating this amazing podcast show. It wouldn't be as successful if it wasn't for you guys. So we want to make sure that we would love it if you would be able to reciprocate and write an amazing, whether it be a 1-star or 5-star review. If you're listening to this on Apple, go to Apple on iTunes and go to the Game Changers audio experience, leave a 1 or a 5-star review, whichever you prefer. If you're listening to this on Android, whether it be on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, and all the good Android platforms, go to podchaser.com. That's podchaser.com. And leave a 1 or a 5-star review on there. We'll be extremely grateful. Thanks very much for tuning in. We've got some great shows coming up. Cheers.